Hello, students of Math for Business and Finance and Math Applications. All right, we're working on the Chapter 4 drill problems, the odd-numbered problems that were assigned as part of your lesson material, so let's move on to it. Okay, drill problem 4-1. It says, fill out the check register that follows with this information. Okay, so you see all of this information here. It's in your textbook, so just keep looking at your textbook because I don't really want to be flipping back and forth in order to be able to fill out the check register. If you're looking at the information in the textbook, you'll be able to understand what's going on here. Okay, so let me get a pen. All right. Notice that my beginning balance is $4,500.75. Right now, my first transaction was on 7/7, and it was check number 482, and it was for AOL in the amount of $143.50. So I need to subtract $143.50. Remember, these brackets mean subtraction. All right, accountants use them all the time. I'm an accountant, so I use them instead of just putting a minus. Okay, and that will give me a new balance of $4,357.25. Right, next transaction was on 7/15. Check number 483 to Staples in the amount of $66.10. So I'm going to subtract $66.10. So I have a new balance of $4,291.15. Next transaction is a deposit on 7/19 in the amount of $800. So I'm going to add in 800, which gives me $5,291.15. Next transaction is check number 484, dated 7/20, to Sprint in the amount of $451.88. So I'm going to subtract $451.88 and get a new balance of $4,639.27. Next transaction is on 7/24. 485 is the check number to Krispy Kreme. In the amount of $319.24. So I'm going to subtract $319.24 and have a new balance of $4,320.03. And then my last transaction on 7/29 is a deposit for $400.30. So I'm going to add that in. Oops. Which now gives me a new balance of $4,720.33. Okay, and that's how you fill out your check register. But before I move on to the next problem, I want to point something out here. Notice that when you're running your balances like this, as you can see, it's kind of all cluttered and everything like that. Okay, if I'm doing it personally, I would not write in these amounts, okay? Because one, I've already written them over here, okay? And two, as you see by my erasing them, it makes it all look much, much cleaner here. I can just look and see what my balance is. So I'm taking the previous balance and then subtracting and getting a new balance. The previous balance, subtracting, and getting a new balance. Taking that balance, subtracting, getting a new balance. Taking that balance, adding, getting a new balance. Right? So it makes my check register look just so much cleaner. And that's just how I would go about doing it. Okay? All right, so move on to the next problem. It says, using the check register in problem 4-1 and the following bank statement, prepare a bank reconciliation for Lee.com. Okay, you're going to have to bear with me as I bounce back and forth between slides here, okay, in order to be able to do this. And I'm going to divide my page in half, and on the left side is my bank statement, and on the right hand side is my check register. Now, remember, the idea behind this is that you're going to compare your bank statement with your check register. And you do it, I do it two ways. I do it in basically two steps. But when you get done comparing, performing the two steps, and you get done comparing, your final balance, whatever your final balance is on your bank statement, should equal the final balance in your check register. Okay? Now, in order to do this, we have to begin with we have to have a starting balance to begin with. And that starting balance is, when you receive your bank statement, is the ending amount on the bank statement. So that's 4,800 and 2301. So I'm going to put the balance here, and that's 482301. And in our check register, go up, our balance was here, 472033. So I'm going to use that 2033. So that's my balance that I'm using for my check register. Okay, so the ending balance on your bank statement and the ending balance in your check register is the beginning balance that you're going to use when you're doing your bank reconciliation. Now, I had said this is a two-step process. My first step is to take and look at my bank statement here, and, well, let me back up a second here. I'm writing that backwards. Okay, so now that I've confused you, or haven't, I'm going to be looking at my check register, and anything that's on my check register that is not on my bank statement, I'm going to put on my bank statement. That would be step one. Then step two is I'm going to look at my bank statement, and anything that's not on my bank statement, I'm going to put it on my check register. Okay, so those are the two steps. So I had said, first, look at my bank statement and see if all of these transactions are in my check register. Okay, and anything that's left over will go on the statement. So on my reconciliation. So I start out here with the check for 143.50, and as you can see, it's in my register, and that's what this here checkbox is for. I can put a check mark there, and what that means is that it is on my bank statement. Okay, so I come down and look at my next transaction, which is $800 as a deposit. Okay, and I see that it's in my check register, so I put a check mark there. Now notice that it skipped over this check for 6610. Okay, realize that things are not necessarily always going to be in order. It's not like you can go down a list. You can, when you're doing this, you sometimes have to jump around and take that into consideration. So This is a relatively easy one, but when you're doing your own and you have, say, 50 transactions, realize that you might write check 482, 43, 44, and 485, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be cashed in that order at the bank. So things will sometimes be moved around and you'll have to look for them. But by using the check marks here, it makes it relatively easy for you to be able to see what was left over that's in your check register and not on your bank statement. Okay, so our next transaction is for $319.24. And I come up to my register and I see here's my $319.24. Okay. Now when I come back down to my bank statement, I have a service charge, all right, on my bank statement that I know is not in my check register, okay, because I haven't written it in yet. However, that's not my intent at this point in time. My intent is that, let me erase this here. My intent is to look at my check register, and anything in my check register that I don't have on my bank statement, I put it on my bank statement. That $15 is on my bank statement. I'm not concerned with that at this moment in time. I'm only looking at the check register. So let me come back up to my check register, and I see I have this here check 483 for 66.10. So I have to put it on my reconciliation, right? As a negative 66.10, because again, that's a check. That would be money that would be coming out of my account. And then I come up and I look down and I see I have check number 484 for 451.88. Okay, that needs to go on. $484 for 451.88. Okay. Now, these are all deductions, right? I do all of my deductions first, and then I do all of my additions second. So since I'm looking at my bank my check register, I don't see any further deductions. Okay, so I'm going to create a subtotal here, and I take my 4,823.01, and I subtract the 66.10, and I subtract the 451.88, and I get a subtotal of 4,305.03. Now, those are my deductions. Now I have to go back and look and see at what additions that are in my check register that are not on my bank statement. And I have this deposit here of $400.30 that is not on my bank statement. So I have to add that in. So I have a deposit from 7/29 for $400.33. When I add that in, okay, so my reconciled balance is 4,705.33. And again, this should equal whatever the balance is in my check register, but we're not there yet. Okay, so now we're going to do the second step. Okay, we are going to say, okay, we're going to look at our bank statement, and whatever is on my bank statement that is not in my check register, I'm going to add it to my check register reconciliation. So when I come up to my bank statement, I see the only thing that I have is this here service charge, because I haven't written it in my check register yet. Okay, so I'm going to come down, and a service charge is the deduction, so that's 7, whatever date that is, say 7/30. And I have my service charge of $15, and that's a deduction, subtraction, because they're taking the money out. And so this is the only deduction I have, so I'm going to subtract. and now that's my subtotal. Now, if I had any additions on my bank statement, let's say, for example, there was an error in a previous month, and they're giving, crediting back money in your account that would show up on your bank statement. Well, then, yeah, you would have to add that in. But in this case here, there isn't. Okay, no more additions. So our final balance in our check register is $4,705.33, and my bank statement is reconciled to my check register in that amount. Okay, so my reconciliation is complete, and I don't have any problems. If there was something wrong, like if I thought that um, if for some reason this was not correct, well, then I would have to go back and find the problem and fix it. So just as a quick, and I realize this video is getting a little long, but I'm almost done. Well, let's just take a quick aside, and let's say instead of using the ending balance here in my check register, let's say, for example, I just wasn't thinking and I automatically used the beginning balance there. Okay, let's say that was for 4,575 cents. Okay, so now when I subtract, that's from 984. Okay, now I have a balance on my check register of 4485.75. Well, that doesn't equal the 4705, okay, because I made this mistake, right? So I literally have to go back and find my mistakes. And yeah, so I know that that beginning balance was for $4,720.33. So now when I did the math, 4705.33, and I'm reconciled, it balances, and I'm done with the reconciliation. Now, the last thing that you have to do is you have to come back up to your check register, okay? And you have to add in, whatever was on your statement, all right, that you don't have in your register, okay? So I have to add in the $15 charge, right? Remember, I have to, well, yeah, I'm going to keep on doing the math here. So I have to add in the charge, 5074, okay? And now I have a new balance of 4705.33, which is my reconciled balance, and now I'm finished, okay? My check register is complete, and I'm done for until next month and when I get my next statement, okay? So again, I probably would not have written that there, and I would just have the new balance here, okay? One last quick aside. When I'm doing this, I would realize that when you go to the next month, okay, and let's say now I have, this was July, so if I'm looking at August, okay, when I go to do August's reconciliation, I still have to take into consideration that this check and this deposit were not were not on the bank statement. So when I get the new bank statement, I should realize, I should be looking and saying, okay, was check 483 cashed, and was check 484 cashed, and was this deposit made? Okay, most likely the deposits would have been made, so it wouldn't end up on your new reconciliation. However, with checks, what if the check got lost in the mail? Okay, let's say that this check for 451.88 was cashed, okay, and that would show up on my next reconciliation, on my next bank statement. But let's say the 6610 was not cashed. Maybe it was lost in the mail, okay? I cannot just automatically, say, okay, it just disappears. I can't just erase it, okay? I have to keep on bringing that forward. In other words, that in that next reconciliation, I would still have the check for check number 483 in the amount of 6610, and I would keep carrying it forward from month to month to month to month until that issue was resolved. And that issue might be resolved by saying I put a stop payment on the check and I reissue another one. Okay. I've also seen where you credit money back to somebody and they don't, or you send them a check and they don't deposit it, and so that ends up getting carried forward, almost forever. And again, it's a matter of figuring out and reconciling that particular issue, and then you can take it off or do whatever it is that you need to do in order to get it off. But the point being here is that that is still outstanding from period to period to period until it's either reconciled by having been cashed or deposited or whatever, or that issue has been resolved outside, and then you can take and readjust your check register for it. Okay, so if you have any questions, feel free to call or contact an instructor. I realize that this was kind of long, but when we're doing our word problems, we're going to have some more, quite a few more reconciliations to do, and you'll see the process again and again and again. And also watch the bank reconciliation overview and the bank reconciliation 1, 2, and 3. The overview gives the theory behind doing a bank rec, and 1, 2, and 3 shows the actual process in much more detail than these drill problems and word problems. Okay, see you in the word problems.